Okay, so this is just so dumb, like so silly. Like, why the hell am I doing this to myself? This is quite literally my worst nightmare. I genuinely couldn't think of anything worse. I'm not looking forward to this at all. Purposefully exposing yourself to cold temperatures sounds like a really stupid idea, but thousands of people do it every single day because of the health and performance benefits it supposedly offers. In fact, it's not even a new idea. The ancient Greeks discovered the beneficial effects of cold water to help ease muscle fatigue, and even the ancient Egyptians mentioned the use of therapeutic hypothermia in the Edwin Smith Papyrus over 5,000 years ago. But more recently, the idea of using cold exposure has been given renewed life thanks to scientific research by people like Susanna Soberg and Andrew Huberman, who've all consistently backed up the claims of its beneficial effects.
And cold in particular can be leveraged to improve mental health, physical health, and performance.
One of the biggest advocates of cold exposure is the Dutch athlete Wim Hof, also known as the Iceman. Studies have shown that his cold therapy methods help to reduce inflammation, fortify the immune system, and naturally elevate mood. And it's also really good at waking you up. So this is basically why I want to give cold showers a go for at least the next 7 days. But before jumping in, both literally and figuratively, I want to share a little bit about how I'm planning to take these cold showers. Now, you're probably thinking that just turning on the cold water and stepping into the cold shower is probably a pretty good place to start. But there is in fact scientific research on exactly how cold the water should be and how long we should be staying in the cold shower too. Firstly then, how cold should the shower be? Well, to be honest, there isn't really a fixed answer to this, but I think the key is to find a temperature that makes you think, holy shit, this is freezing cold, I'm really uncomfortable, I want to get out, but I can safely stay in. And typically this is somewhere between 7 and 15 degrees centigrade or around 45 and 60 degrees Fahrenheit. My advice here would be to take things slowly because if you step straight into cold water, cold shock is technically possible. So begin at like a lukewarm temperature, then slowly dial it down to a sort of uncomfortable but safe temperature. The second question is, how long should that cold shower be? Now, the real simple answer to this question is that the colder the stimulus, the less time you need to spend in that cold water. For example, one study showed significant and prolonged increases in dopamine and other neurochemicals when people stayed in cool water of around 60 degrees Fahrenheit for about an hour. But another study showed very similar health benefits when people stayed in extremely cool water of around 40 degrees Fahrenheit for just 20 seconds. So it is possible to experience great health benefits either way. As a general rule, my advice would be to follow the findings of a very recent study by Dr. Susanna Soberg, which shows prolonged health benefits from doing deliberate cold exposure for just 11 minutes per week in total. For example, you could do 2 to 4 sessions lasting 1 to 5 minutes each throughout the whole week, and that would be plenty. So with that in mind, it's time to enjoy my very first cold shower. This is genuinely going to be so shit. Like, what the fuck am I doing? So cold. Like, seriously, the first 10 seconds were awful, but then after like 10-15 seconds I actually started to warm up. Like, I didn't actually feel too bad. It was kind of strange really. Like, I thought I'd be freezing throughout the whole thing, but you sort of like get comfortable after the first few seconds, which was kind of nice. But yeah, right now I feel like super energetic and super awake, and I'm kind of like ready to go. I'm super pumped, and I'm really proud of myself for actually going in that shower because I thought there's no chance in hell that I was going to do that. So yeah, things are good. So while I found that first cold shower pretty uncomfortable, especially when I was in the water, there's definitely something to be said about pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone. Like, getting on with something, even though there are easier options available, must build some amount of grit and resilience. Well, it turns out there's actually some research to back this up. By deliberately exposing ourselves to the stress of cold exposure, we are exerting what is known as top-down control over the parts of our brain that regulate reflexive states. So the reflexive states are telling us to do one thing, but the top-down control means we do something completely different. And it's this top-down control that's the basis of what most people refer to when they talk about resilience and grit. So the more we train our brain in this way, the better we are at maintaining a cool, calm and clear head whenever a real-world stressor comes our way. Deliberate cold exposure is also a brilliant way to increase your energy and focus. This is because when we step into the water, it releases like a ton of adrenaline and noradrenaline, also known as epinephrine and norepinephrine, into the brain and body. These neurochemicals help us to stay alert, and they also stay with us for a long time after we get out the water, meaning that we can apply that energy and focus into a bunch of different activities throughout the day. And while we're on the topic of neurochemicals, deliberate cold exposure can also cause prolonged increase in our levels of the neuromodulator dopamine, which is responsible for elevating our mood, increasing our levels of focus, and also making us feel more energetic. So it's no wonder I felt pretty good when I stepped out the cold shower. Okay, so it's now day 3 and things are going pretty well. Like, I'm enjoying the cold showers, I'm getting super pumped and motivated once I finish the cold shower, so yeah, it's been a good process so far. And actually, earlier today I was reading this really interesting study that I want to share with you, so let me go get it. So the study is called Human Physiological Responses to Cold Water Immersion, Acute and Repeated Exposures, and it says some really interesting stuff about the neurochemical response to cold water exposure. Basically, in the study, they found that sitting in water at 14 degrees Celsius for an hour increases metabolism by 350%, increases epinephrine in the blood by 530%, and an increase in dopamine concentrations of 250%, which is similar to the increases in dopamine elicited by something like nicotine. This to me is absolutely mental, and apparently those effects can last for many hours after that cold water exposure. So although things aren't going to feel too comfortable when you're in the shower, you're going to get a whole ton of health and performance benefits for many hours afterwards. So far, I've definitely noticed an increase in my energy and focus in the hours following a cold shower, but it got me thinking, like, how much energy, focus, happiness and stuff like that can we get from a cold shower? Like, is there a way for us to maximize the neurochemical effects of cold exposure? Well, I did a bit of digging and there are actually a few different evidence-based ways I found to further increase our levels of epinephrine, norepinephrine and dopamine in the body. Firstly, there's something known as the Sobo principle, and basically the idea here is that whenever we're in really cold water, we'll typically have this urge to stay completely still because that allows like a thermal layer to surround our body and insulate us from that cold. But the problem with that is that once we allow our body to warm up slightly, we're decreasing the potency of that cold water exposure and therefore limiting the neurochemical response too. So Dr. Susanna Soberg's research here says that ideally we want to maximize our exposure to that cold. And we can do this by moving around a lot while we're in the shower, or when we finish our shower and we step out of the shower, we can just let ourselves like dry off in the air rather than instantly grabbing a towel and drying off like that. This also has the added benefit of increasing our metabolism, or at the very least, more sustained increases in our metabolism as our body converts white fat, i.e. energy storage, into beige or brown fat, which are more highly metabolically active. Secondly, count walls. Now, the idea of a wall is basically just the sensation of, no, I don't want to do this. So every time we have this feeling that we want to step out the cold shower, we want to warm up, but instead we just stay in the cold shower and embrace that coldness, we can count that as like one mental wall that we've overcome. The goal then should be to overcome a set number of walls every time we step into the shower and therefore slowly build up our resilience. So on the first day it might be, I want to overcome 3 mental walls. Then the next day it might be, I want to overcome 5 mental walls. Then the day after that it might be, I want to overcome 3 mental walls again, but this time the shower is going to be slightly colder. So this just trains our brain to be more and more resilient because every single day we're just becoming more and more comfortable stepping outside our comfort zone. Finally, use cognitive anchors. When we step into cold water, our cognitive function declines by about 30 to 80%, especially in the prefrontal cortex, and our stress levels just go way up. So if we can anchor our mind in cognitive activities when we step into the cold water, then we're going to be pretty good at maintaining clarity of mind whenever we're in similar sort of stressful situations in the future. For example, trying to recall specific bouts of information or trying to answer semi-complex maths problems while you're in the cold shower requires a certain amount of focus, attention and working memory, which teaches your prefrontal cortex to stay engaged during high stress situations. So overall, we're basically just training our brain to keep working and thinking when our natural instinct and our natural reflex is to shut down those parts of our brain that are involved in deliberate planning and thinking. Right, it's now day 7 and I've just finished my full week of cold showers, and the big question is, will I continue with it? And the answer to that is a resounding yes. Like, I really enjoyed the extra levels of energy and focus and discipline that I've had following my cold showers. So I'm really excited to see where this will lead me over the coming months. No doubt cold showers are going to be super uncomfortable whenever I step inside them, but if there's even just like a 1% gain in improvements in my mood, in my energy, in my focus, then having cold showers is 100% worth it.